Hi there, welcome again. My name is Anita, and thank you for coming back to listen to me talk about Fleetwood Mac records and hopefully eventually the large collection that I have, including lots of records, scrapbook, all sorts of stuff. Fleetwood Mac. I love to talk about Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac, and I had begun a video not too long ago, beginning with some early Fleetwood Mac records, which actually I want to. I'd be remiss if I didn't correct myself in discussing one of the records, which was by a band Sincerely San Jose. I could not remember another member of the band Fritz, and that was Bob Aguirre. I'd mentioned Javier Pacheco, and I could not remember Bob's name, and I do apologize. But even that wouldn't be correct because the band was actually begun by Jody Mooring, her cousin, Bob Aguirre, and Lindsey Buckingham, and then not quite a year later, Javier had joined. There's a couple other members, Cal Roper and Brian Kane. I think that's all the members that were ever in Fritz, but I just kind of wanted to make that correction just because I felt bad. I forgot Bob's name. I've met Bob and Javier, both very, very nice people, and I just felt terrible that I forgot the name. Anyway, with that out of the way, I just wanted to conclude the Buckingham Nicks 45s that I have. And I had finished up with Don't Let Me Down Again and Crystal being the main records releases. And then we come to the next release, which, when I looked it over, I realized that there's, 5 out of 10 Buckingham Nicks, 5 songs out of the 10 that were on the Buckingham Nicks album virtually in release or out there. You have the album, which is kind of funny when you realize that we don't have a legitimate version of Buckingham Nicks, which I guess I could talk more in length later when I talk about the LPs. But in the 45s alone, we have Don't Let Me Down Again, Crystal, Crying in the Night, Stephanie, and Without a Leg to Stand On. Later, as we know, on the Enchanted box set, Stevie released Long Distance Winner. So that is Don't Let Me Down Again, Crystal, Crying in the Night, Stephanie, Without a Leg to Stand On, 6 actually. And then Crystal was on the Fleetwood Mac White Album, as we discussed, and again, as I had said earlier, it was on the Practical Magic re-recorded and re-released on the Practical Magic soundtrack. But I apologize, 6 out of 10. We could darn near put the album together. And with Lindsey performing Stephanie, not only in Fleetwood Mac but on his solo outings, you could almost kind of piece it together. I do believe that actually, possibly one other, Frozen Love or Lola, I just can't remember. Seems like something else was performed live with Fleetwood Mac right when Lindsey and Stevie joined. It just kind of got me thinking that, again, it's kind of funny we don't have a proper release, but you could almost piece together your own proper release with all the releases from the album that they did have. Anyway, just silly thoughts. Next up in the Buckingham Nicks 45 collection, there's just a little stack left, would be the Crying in the Night, backed with Crying in the Night USA promo copy. White vinyl, or white label again, like I had said. Again, we have the stereo mono. This version of Crying in the Night comes in at an exact 3 minutes, both sides. So that is a USA promo release. Again, with my strange ways and having everything different, I'm going to kind of crack this one in. This should be a little bit later in the collection, but I do remember I grew up in the Bay Area and being in a store in Santa Cruz, California, and seeing this popping out and just losing my freaking mind. I have it down as 2013, but Discogs said that a version of this in purple and red had come out in 2011, and that a blue one was issued in 2020. But for some reason, I have this purple one down as 2013. Anyway, this came out, again, it says out of England, but I think that they say that just because to avoid bootleg repercussions. But it came out in a fold out like this, much later. Obviously, not a legit release. I don't know if they just recut it or what they did. Just copied it onto another 45, but it is a very lovely purple shade. And just like the original, it is Crying in the Night, mono and stereo, both clocking in at 3 o'clock. I mean, virtually, other than this same, well, I don't know, it's pretty damn near the exact same. Font, everything, placement, matches up really nicely. But anyway, this is obviously not an official release. I, as a completist, succumb to buying unofficial releases, which I don't like because I don't like that the artist doesn't get anything, but I love vinyl, and this is really pretty, and it's pretty clear sound, actually. Whoever had done this did a pretty good job. We'll also talk about that when it comes to 12-inch LPs, when the explosion of Buckingham Nicks in virtually every color known to mankind, so stupid, was released, supposedly coming out of Europe, England, somewhere. Wasn't even that great a transfer, but the transfer to this 45 wasn't bad at all. It's pretty darn good. But yeah, I have that next following this just because it matches as to what it is, even though this is bootleg that came out quite a few years later. Counts, it doesn't count. But what does count is the very official USA release of Crying in the Night first picture sleeve that we see, that's a legitimate photo sleeve, not just the red Polydor, as we're so accustomed to. And this was a big find early in my collecting years. A holy grail for a lot of Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac collectors. Kind of common now, more prevalent on eBay, and again with eBay and Discogs, a lot of people have it. But and I do believe that this came out in '76 because it's this hole in the beginning, which is also a large poster of this that has even this in the beginning, because they really wanted to show you Stevie and Lindsey's work prior to joining Fleetwood Mac. And give you a little bit more background on them, gave a little bit more exposure to the Fleetwood Mac White Album, and yeah, so this was a USA release that I believe came out in '76, and it had Crying in the Night with the B-side of Stephanie, and that is a legitimate USA release. Again, I don't know how many times I can say this without embarrassing myself. There is another one, same. Everything's the same. The catalog number, everything about it, but that darn silly font. And if there's anything different, I gotta have it. And you can just see there's small nuances, but you can just see that the font is different placements on the sides here and such. Obviously different years. I don't know when. I know how to read the matrix runoffs, but I don't know how to read the matrix runoffs. So, or I haven't done my research to find out precisely what year or what plant or what have you, to find out maybe when this came out, which one is first. But I just found that there were 2 United States releases and they had different fonts, so I had to get them. So I don't think there's officially 2 releases. I just think that they were pressed at different times or different plants, but both around 1976. So that's what I think. After that would come, I did a little research on this. Again, Polydor, back to a red label, red sleeve, with the Gold of Band series. Band of Gold series, my apologies. And I kept looking at Polydor as like, why is this called Band of Gold series? And I came to find out that Polydor had purchased MGM Records, and MGM Records did a Band of Gold series, so they kind of merged the two. And that was done in the late 70s, early 80s. So I don't have an exact date for when this came out, but again, let's wager late 70s, early 80s. To again, just kind of bring it back up to date, back to, the forefront of people's attention, that this really cool song, and possibly some of it was done, probably Stephanie, more in concert, which was getting people's attention, and there's a chance to cash in on it again or just re-release it. But I will say that after these ones, this one came out much later. I would say maybe Tusk to Belladonna era would be my guesstimation, but I can't be sure. After that, we get kind of obscure. You would think that after all those releases, or I should say, the one song with 2 releases in the UK, you would think that Crying in the Night, with all the USA releases and an official USA release, would get recognition in England, but instead we get recognition in Australia. There are no UK releases of Crying in the Night in the UK, unless you count the supposed bootleg. We do have them in Australia and New Zealand. Very strange, very hard to come by. So we have Crying in the Night, Back to Stephanie, and this is the Australia version. Nothing really special other than the 33 center hole to play it. It's a 45. You play it at 45 RPM, but just the smaller cutout. And then the New Zealand issue is just both. This one is correct. Polygram. Again, I don't remember how it goes. If they bought out MGM and then merged into something like that, I don't know, but I don't really remember my history, and I guess I could have done more research. But we're talking more about the band than the label per se. But Polygram, this is a legitimate cover for this record, especially coming out of another country. But we're just back to Polydor with New Zealand. And again, this is kind of a hard record to come by. And having found these where it was just really, really very exciting when I got those. I keep my eBay purchases and information that I can about them. But yeah, Crying in the Night, Back to Stephanie out of New Zealand. Crying in the Night, Back to Stephanie out of Australia. Getting a little bit more obscure after that is the Without a Leg to Stand On out of the Netherlands. Actually, I have 2 copies of this. This is the better vinyl one, but this one's got, this is the better vinyl, but it's got a little boo-boo. And this one is the better cover, but the vinyl's not so great. Could I swap them? Frankenstein them, yes, but I don't do that. Airplay. I mean, again, I'm going to guess it came out properly in 1973 with the release of the Buckingham Nicks record, but just a really kind of a strange little find to see this out in the wild out of the Netherlands, whereas this song didn't get any single release. It's not on the B-side. It's nowhere to be found on any of the earlier B-sides or front side for USA, Australia, England, New Zealand, what have you. Nothing really, again, much special about this other than it is a picture sleeve, so that, again, pretty awesome. Not a different photo, but it doesn't matter. It's pretty neat. This is the back of the picture sleeve. And we have the side A, which is Without a Leg to Stand On. Side B, just Stephanie. So really nice to have these. Can be found. You can look on eBay occasionally, but Discogs will probably have some of these if anybody's searching for them. Some of these, this one is a little bit harder to find. And the Australia, anything, if you're collecting vinyl at all, whatever band it is, releases out of Australia and New Zealand tend to be much harder to come by. So if you find whoever your favorite band is, but if you're collecting Stevie, Fleetwood Mac, any releases out of Australia are really hard and obscure to come by in the United States. So I suggest if you find them at a good price, you grab them. But anyway, so this was that. And our last one for this little bit shorter video, than the last time is one of my favorites out of my entire collection, and that is the Don't Let Me Down Again Backed with Crying in the Night France. Definitely, definitely a rare bird. Um, you know what? It's not that different, but it's different enough that I absolutely love the cover. I love the little bit of a different font here with their name on the top. This piece, the red writing, that I don't know, just I'm a sucker for differences like that. And again, you'll see me talk about that a lot. Um, and just whoever put it together, it's really lovely. This can be found on Discogs. Uh, this one is a little bit easier to find than this one. Back of the record, no photos, just lots of labels. Polydor's distribution, made in France, right here down at the bottom. Yeah, so that one was kind of a cool one to find. I had a lot of my Buckingham Nicks 45s for quite a few years, and it took me quite a while to track this one down. But when I did, it was, not the best shape. But I'm also a person who will take the record out, put it in a white paper sleeve. I will take a 7-inch insert that you can find at any good record store or an online record collector place to put in the jacket so it doesn't bend, so it keeps it pretty stiff. And yeah, so that is all for this video. Next one that I plan to do will be the singles from the Fleetwood Mac White Album or Fleetwood Mac album. There are quite a few singles from that, so I think I'll have to break that one down as well into 2 videos. But still pretty new at this, just trying to get the feel of it, and thank you for coming, and hope this is content that you enjoy. I have a lot of stuff. Like I said, I have a lot of records, I have scrapbooks, photos, concert tickets, autographs, original artwork by the band, posters, t-shirts, mugs. I have a really vast collection, and I'd just like to share it online with you, and for those who are interested in rock and roll memorabilia, and especially Fleetwood Mac and Stevie Nicks. So thanks again for joining me, and until next time, bye-bye.